On this episode of High Impact Garage, we're going to show you the proper procedures on doing an oil change and what you should expect when you have an oil change done properly. And Louie over there is going to show us how. So our first step here is getting that drain plug off, right?
That's right.
So he's going to go ahead and get the drain plug off and start draining the fluid. Now typically when you do an oil change, you want the oil hot. That way the viscosity of the oil is nice and thin, it drains out quickly, and as it does, it'll evacuate a lot of those and suspend a lot of the stuff that would normally just rest on the bottom of the oil pan. So this is kind of a key to doing a good oil change, is making sure that the oil is hot when you drain it. So here we are checking stuff out while the oil's draining. You're not sitting around doing nothing. We're playing on your cell phone, right?
That's
so
right.
We're checking out, verifying condition of things.
Checking for leaks, checking irregular wear on the tires.
So what are you doing here?
Checking the thickness of the brake pads. Make sure everything's good. Nice thing about open rims is you can check them without taking the wheel off. Checking the rear tires.
So we're looking at the car. What do you find, Louie?
There's a little bit of a wetness on this corner over here.
Okay. So at this point, what we'd want to do is check for the source of it, and then we can advise the customer before it becomes a serious issue. Louie, how did you take the drain plug and put that on? Did you use an impact on that?
Oh no, no impact. It's a little bit more than hand tight. There is a torque spec for it, but you do not want to use impact, or else you're going to ruin that plug, or worst case, the oil pan itself.
What's the procedure you're following now?
I'm trying to remove this oil filter, and most of the time, if it's not on too tight, you should be able to take it off by hand. But
Yeah, you know, He-Man was the one that put it on last.
well, and it's hot, so you know it gets under pretty tight when it's hot. This one.
I also have a snazzy new oil filter wrench that I bought.
I might need it.
Just remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty.
At least they give you an access hole for this.
So did the previous mechanic put that oil filter on too tight? Or is Louie just weak in the arms? I mean, I hear all the time how Louie is getting old.
It's the collarbone.
It's the collarbone? Okay. All right, so there's the oil filter right there. And then, of course, for disposal purposes, that's going to sit there and drain into that pan for a while before we actually are able to dispose of it legally. And you'll note that we're collecting all of the oil and not putting it down the drain. So collection of oil and disposal of oil properly is critical when you're servicing cars. So we're lubing the oil filter a little bit. And why do we lube the seal on the oil filter?
So it doesn't stick onto the motor, to the housing.
Yeah, so we want it to get tight enough, but we also do it so that it doesn't grab that seal and tear it as you're putting it on. And of course, that's sometimes overlooked, unfortunately. Also, a dry installed seal can sometimes stick as it so that when you take it off, it might become a little more difficult to take off. And there's Louis gonna wipe that down. All this stuff gets wiped down, and so there's should be no oil residue left on the car when we're done with an oil change. I mean, it's really not a huge amount. I mean, it's just this little residual, but there's definitely oil residue. But it's not coming off the valve cover. All right, so we've got our oil fill opened and funnel on it. So a quick little plug. What oil are we using today, Louis?
5W30. Looks like a synthetic, yeah. 100% synthetic.
Full synthetic AMSOIL OE. Is a good, it's a really good synthetic motor oil. We sell it a lot. We are not sponsored by AMSOIL. We simply distribute the product. So there's no, this is not endorsed. This is not a video of endorsement by AMSOIL, but if they wanted to throw some money our way, we wouldn't turn it away. However, yeah, we're using their product for oil on this video. So notice we're also using a funnel that is sealed to the cap surface, so we're not going to spill oil everywhere. The funnel's not going to flop out and spill oil and then cause even worse problems. And so a good practice as this oil change is being done, good practice is to check the oil level as you're filling. I have seen where oil level specs are improper. They're inaccurate sometimes because typographical errors happen. So the best way to check that is the good old dipstick and just check as you're filling. Usually, so we are full, if you would, at this quantity. So how many quarts is that?
That's 5.
Okay, so what we're going to want to do now is now we got 5 quarts in and we're showing full on the dipstick. We're going to get the engine running and get the oil filter filled, and then we'll check the oil again. Checking the oil on this thing. So proper way to check the oil, Louis.
I mean, you can pull out this dipstick and look at it initially, but you want to wipe it off and stick it back in and just double check. Make sure you're getting a consistent reading. I've seen sometimes where, see, it showed full at first, but now it shows it needs about a quart, which is what it should.
By the spec, exactly. This is why we check these things. And why do you think that lowered down?
Probably the oil filling into the oil filter.
Exactly, exactly. So for the people at home, the oil filter, when it's dry, its capacity varies depending on size. But in fairness, a quart is not abnormal, especially on some of the older cars on the market. So we're going to throw another quart at it, check the level, and that should be our proper oil level. And of course, we don't want to overfill the oil because that can cause other issues. For example, cause aeration of the oil, and it can also lead to that oil getting up past the rings because it's excessive level. It can get up past the rings, get into the combustion chamber, and then can also, that soot of that oil can get down into the catalytic converter and cause damage. So proper oil level is critical. Overfilling, there's some people back in the day that might have said, well, I'd rather have the oil level too full than too low. Well, I'd rather have it right. And that's the proper way of looking at things. All right, so we've got that checked out. We've also checked into some other of the issues, and now it's time to start doing some under hood inspection.
So this has a hydraulic power steering system, even though it's an electric power steering pump. But looks like it's right where it needs to be at the max. If you have one of these coolant recovery tanks, you can see the lever from the outside. You don't have to open the cap, and probably wouldn't because it's still at temperature. So it looks like down here Shows the minimum max point, which is good. Now we have a brake fluid over here. You should be able to see. The level here looks like it's clear and it's at the level, so nothing to worry about there. You might want to check the washer fluid, but seems like it's up to where it needs to be.
I think a lot of people in the desert overlook that washer fluid reservoir, don't they?
Oh yeah, we don't use it out here unless it's to clean your window from a dusty windstorm or something.
What about the condition of the drive belt? What does that look like?
Belt still looks fine. No, there aren't any tears in it. The outside looks good. Doesn't look worn.
Okay. And then on this car, what about the air filter on this car?
Oh, this car looks like it has a K&N reusable filter. So we could open it up here.
So even if it is a reusable filter, we still want to check it, just because we do have the cleaning products in-house if it needs to be cleaned. This customer is really good about maintaining it, and that's beautiful, as you can see.
Pretty good.
So, but we still want to check, even if people have that sticker on there, we're still going to want to check to make sure that that filter is in fact clean and doing its job properly. Sometimes people think when they see the K&N, it says it's got a 1,000,000-mile warranty. There are certain customers we've ran into that go, oh, I don't have to do anything for 1,000,000 miles, and that's not true. So it's we do try to keep up on that type of stuff. Probably not going to
cabin air filter.
Exactly. We're
not, it's getting to that time out here where it's starting to get hot, and people are going to complain that it either smells or that they're not getting enough air volume. So it's probably going to be the cabin air filter.
Yeah. So we're not going to show you that in this video. We will check it, but we're not going to show you that in this video because we're sensitive to our customers. We don't want to open up the car and show anything off that might be personal. So we won't show that, but we do want to check that. I know I said I wasn't going to show the cabin air filter, but this is actually a pretty good point to bring up. So this cabin filter, this customer is really good about maintenance, and we changed this cabin air filter last year, but as you can tell, it's pretty dirty. So ultimately, it's not because of lack of maintenance that the situation is the way it is. It just happens to be that that's what happens in a year. So can you imagine if you weren't staying on top of your maintenance? All right, so I hope you enjoyed us walking you through the process of doing an oil change. Our customer graciously allowed us to film the car so that we could do this video. Feel free to share this video with anybody that you know. There is a process, and it's a good time to check a lot of different fluids, a lot of different things on the car. It's not as simple as just draining the oil out, pouring new oil in, and putting on a new filter. We take this process seriously as a matter of a routine maintenance and making sure that we're catching things before they become a problem. So like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the flip side.